When scientists draw a DNA map of Europe, most peoples blend smoothly into each other. But right on the border of Spain and France, there is one small people whose DNA stands apart like a sharp edge on that map: the Basques. You and I were taught a simple story of Europe: Romans, Celts, Iberians, then modern nations. But the Basques don't fully fit that story. Their genes look different, and their language sounds like nothing else on Earth. Before we go deeper into this mystery, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and have you ever taken a DNA test, or would you want to? Today, we follow what real genetic studies and real scientists have found about this Basque genetic singularity, and what it means for identity, history, and who we think we are. Imagine almost 2,000 people from northern Spain and southwest France giving blood and saliva, then their DNA being scanned at more than 600,000 points across the genome. And this is what a team led by Professor David Comas at Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona did, together with researchers in France and the Basque country. When they plotted these genomes on a European genetic map, most Iberian populations formed a smooth gradient. But the Basques formed a clear, separate cluster, even compared to their closest Spanish and French neighbors. The study, published in the journal Current Biology in 2021, called this a genetic singularity, not a different species. We're not aliens, but a population that stands out inside Europe. At first glance, this could sound like proof that the Basques are the last pure Europeans, untouched since the Stone Age. But the same study actually shows something very different. To understand why, we need to go back, not just a few hundred years, but thousands, into a Europe that looked and felt nothing like the one we know today. Around 7,000 years ago, Y-type groups of farmers and herders began to arrive in the Iberian Peninsula from Anatolia in what is now Turkey. According to Basque geneticist Íñigo Olalde, whose team at Harvard reconstructed the genomic history of Iberia, these farmers mixed with local hunter-gatherers and left a genetic makeup of about 80% early farmer and 20% local hunter-gatherer. The Basques are part of this story. They are not outside it. Well, they descend from the same waves of early farmers and local hunter-gatherers as other Iberian peoples. Later, about 4,500 years ago, nomadic herders from the steppes of present-day Russia and Ukraine arrived, adding new ancestry into the Iberian gene pool. For most of Iberia, history after that meant more and more mixing: Phoenicians, Romans, Germanic tribes, and much later, Muslims from North Africa. But in the rugged valleys and mountain slopes of the Western Pyrenees, something different began to happen. Change slowed down. In northern Spain, at a site called El Portalón in the Atapuerca caves, archaeologists uncovered the remains of ancient farmers who lived thousands of years ago. When a team including Professor Matthias Jakobsen from Uppsala University studied their DNA, they made a striking discovery. These Bronze Age people were genetically closest to modern Basques. This result challenged older ideas. For years, some people claimed Basques were direct, pure descendants of Ice Age hunter-gatherers, unchanged since the glaciers. But the cave DNA told a different story. Basques still carry the same big mixture as their neighbors: early farmers from Anatolia, local hunter-gatherers, and later steppe ancestry. The mystery is not their origin. It is the way they became more isolated after those big events. Mexican biologist Cristina Valdiosera showed that the real genetic divergence of Basques from other Iberians started only a few thousand years ago, not in the deep Ice Age. So if they share major roots with other Iberians, what makes them so singular today? To answer that, we have to listen to a language that has no family tree. The Basque language, Euskara, is unique. It is not Indo-European like Spanish, French, or English, and it has no clearly proven relatives anywhere else in the world. For decades, people tried to connect Euskara to mysterious scripts, to the Caucasus, even to North Africa. But modern linguists say none of these links are proven. Euskara remains a linguistic orphan. The 2021 study, led by David Comas, added a new layer. His team sampled 190 people whose 4 grandparents were all born in the same small areas across the Basque region. When they looked at their DNA, they saw not only a difference between Basques and non-Basques, but also sharp differences inside the Basque country itself, matching old dialect regions of Euskara. In simple words, language borders inside this small region lined up with genetic borders. The team wrote that Euskara and its dialects likely helped limit movement and marriage between groups, reinforcing isolation after the Iron Age. So now we see the picture more clearly. Same big origins as other Iberians, but a language barrier that helped freeze certain lineages in place for more than 2,000 years. Another study looked closely at the Y chromosome, which is passed from father to son in autochthonous Basque men from the provinces of Álava, Gipuzkoa, and Vizcaya. It found that more than 85% of their Y chromosomes belong to a branch called RS116, part of the wider RM269 group that is very common across Western Europe. This lineage is often linked to Bronze Age expansions that also affected many Indo-European speaking peoples in Europe. Here is the twist. Basque men share many of these Y lineages with their Indo-European neighbors, yet their language never became Indo-European. Population geneticists like Íñigo Olalde and David Comas are clear about this. Genes and languages do not always move together. A people can take in new ancestors without changing their mother tongue, or change language without a big shift in DNA. So the Y chromosome is not a simple story of purity or mixing. It is proof that identity is made of many layers, biological, cultural, and historical at the same time. Long before genome-wide studies, doctors and biologists noticed something unusual about Basque blood. Mid-20th century work on blood groups and Rh types suggested that Basques had certain frequencies of blood group O and Rh patterns that did not match other nearby Europeans. So these findings helped create the early idea that Basques were biologically special, maybe even direct survivors of an older European population. But as tools improved, researchers like Comas, Olalde, and others showed that the true picture is more subtle. Basques share the same large ancestral components as their neighbors. Their singularity comes from later isolation and limited gene flow. And the story moved from a separate ancient race to a branch of Iberians whose evolution slowed down compared to others. Still, for many Basques, the idea that their blood and language set them apart became part of their lived identity, something they held on to through times of pressure and change. Over the centuries, empires and states drew straight lines on maps. Romans, later Spanish and French kingdoms, and modern governments all claimed pieces of Basque territory. The political borders split one people into citizens of different states. But genetic studies see something else. Fine-scale clusters inside the Basque region that match geography and old dialect areas, not modern borders. One of the authors of the 2021 study, Professor Jaume Bertrand-Petit from Spain, had led a 2010 project that did not find strong Basque uniqueness. He later admitted that the older work was wrong and that better methods now reveal clearer differentiation. So this shows how real science works. New data can correct old results, even for the same expert. There is no fixed political message here. There is simply a clearer picture of how isolated populations evolve. At the same time, Basque communities experienced bans on their language, social pressure to assimilate, and at times strong conflict around identity and autonomy. Their DNA and their daily life told different sides of the same story. They were similar to others, but also not the same. And then, a new kind of test appeared, one that put identity in a number on a phone screen. Today, millions of people order home DNA kits. They spit in a tube, and weeks later, an app tells them 20% this, 30% that, 50% something else. For Basques and for everyone else, these numbers can feel powerful. Some Basques might see a Basque or northern Spain cluster and feel that science has confirmed what they already knew. Others may see mixed signals, French, Iberian, or other European components, and feel that their strong local identity does not match the way a company has drawn the map. Scientists like Íñigo Olalde and David Comas warn that these tests simplify a very complex reality. All human groups are mixtures of earlier groups. Clusters on a graph are based on statistics and reference samples, not on any fixed rule from nature. So when you look at your own DNA results, you are not reading a judgment about your worth or your beliefs. That you are seeing one way of summarizing a long, messy history of movement, marriage, and survival. If you have taken a DNA test, did it match your family story, or did it surprise you? Tell me below. If we step back, a pattern appears across Europe. First, early farmers from Anatolia spread with their crops and animals. They mixed with local hunter-gatherers. Later, steppe herders arrived and added new ancestry. After that came centuries of empire, trade, war, and migration. Us, the Basques, are inside this pattern, not outside it. But compared to many other Iberian populations, they received less genetic input after the Iron Age, from Romans, later Eastern groups, and North African Muslims. This is why Cristina Valdiosera says that it is the Basques who are frozen in time. As other groups in Iberia kept changing, the Basques changed more slowly. In that sense, Basque DNA is not just a curiosity. It is a kind of time capsule, a clearer snapshot of what one branch of Western Europe looked like a couple of thousand years ago. Their experience, holding onto a unique language and strong local identity while sharing deep roots with their neighbors, acts like a mirror for the rest of Europe, and maybe for many of us watching right now. Genetic studies by people like David Comas in Spain, Íñigo Olalde, Cristina Valdiosera, Matthias Jakobsson in Sweden. Mia and others have answered many questions about Basque origins. They show that Basques share the same big ancestral blocks as other Iberians, that their singularity is due to continuity since the Iron Age, and that language played a key role in limiting later gene flow. But there is one thing these studies cannot do. They cannot tell a Basque person what it feels like to speak Euskara for the first time. They cannot measure what it means to stay in a valley where your grandparents, me and their grandparents, lived and died. Identity is more than DNA. It includes faith, language, memory, stories, and choices. A lab can tell you where some of your ancestors came from. It cannot tell you who you decide to be. So here is the final question. If your own DNA turned out to be more mixed or more singular than you expected, would that change how you see yourself, or would your real identity still be written in the life you live every day? If you enjoyed deep dives into hidden histories and ancient DNA mysteries, make sure to subscribe, because the next story might be about the secrets buried in your side of the map.